A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, there was a Jedi named Skywalker, and the sister of Skywalker, and Skywalker's lover, and the various masters to Skywalker, and father figures to Skywalker, and various friends of Skywalker, and this guy who fought Skywalker one time, and somehow Skywalker's niece/daughter/whatever. Just kidding, she's actually a Palpatine. I think you get the idea. Growing up, most people tend to fall into one camp, or text, that is formative to your development. Star Trek, Star Wars, Doctor Who, Harry Potter, Marvel, DC, and so on. For me, it was Lord of the Rings. I was a total history nerd as a kid, and Jackson's films were the catalyst for my lifelong love of fantasy. Partly because it was one of the few options there, I would watch the films over and over again religiously every time I'd be staying at my grandpa's place. Don't get me wrong, it's not like I'm a machine or something. Like everyone, I think lightsabers are the coolest thing ever. But while I respect the films, The Empire Strikes Back is probably my favourite. It's saddening that an entire galaxy of potential revolves entirely around the same handful of people. Remember, this was even before Disney got their hands on the IP, and we all know how that went. The desecration of the EU must have been depressing, and I'm not even a fan. I've talked about this before, but what is unquestionably my favourite game of all time is Mass Effect 2, and it has remained so for a good 15 years now. There are many reasons why that is, and yeah, part of that's definitely nostalgia, and maybe I'll talk about it fully one day. But it's also because of what it did for the entire Mass Effect universe as a franchise. I liked the first game. It's aged pretty terribly, and the archetypal story was fine. It was obviously emulating space opera and did a perfectly serviceable job. But it was in Mass Effect 2 that, while to the first game's credit for setting all that up, we finally took a step back and allowed the universe to breathe. Hero worship, and let's just call player-centric game design, is yet another can of worms that warrants its own video. But part of the success of Mass Effect 2 was in finally pulling back, and the realization that Shepard is a tiny, insignificant speck that exists within an entire galaxy full of various factions, planets, and untold trillions of life, most of which don't even know your name, and they'd be more than happy to gut you on the street. From the heights of Ilium, to the back alleys of Omega, to a shady facility on an unnamed planet, the triumph of Mass Effect 2 was in showing a wide range of cultures, aliens, and people, conveying its universe through what is arguably the best cast of characters, period, and building to what is easily the greatest final mission in any game ever. The beauty in this was twofold. One, to convey stakes and remind you of what you're fighting for, but also two, that the Milky Way doesn't suddenly stop existing because you transition between loading screens. Mass Effect is a miracle of world building, and in that sense, it was never really about Shepard. It was about fighting for everything else. Of all the new media that's come out since Disney acquired Star Wars, the only thing I've seen is Rogue One. Unsurprisingly, that probably makes it my new favourite of the new canon. Don't get me wrong, there are issues like how Jyn isn't really a character, she's a passive vessel for plot, but for much the same reason I like Mass Effect 2, it didn't make another whole mini-series about someone who once saw Luke Skywalker walking down the street and got his autograph. It looked at the wider context of the world. But Rogue One wasn't the first to do this, of course. The EU, or Legends, before it, spent decades and arguably exceeded anything the films or TV shows ever put out. Among this huge body of work, there was a little something you may have heard of. Dun, 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 dun. Okay, I'll stop. Surprise, I gotcha. This is actually a KOTOR video. Knights of the Old Republic, both 1 and 2, are the best things to come out of the entire Star Wars IP, and you better believe I'll die on this hill. Ignoring the writing on the wall that the MMO represented, or how Drew Karpyshyn's shitty fanfiction utterly destroyed all that setup, the Old Republic setting, Revan, Malik, the Exile, and my boy HK-47 or Visas Ma are as good as it gets. Like I said, I'm not a Star Wars fan, so maybe it's unfair to give all the credit to KOTOR given it was building on books and comics that came before it. But the Old Republic was the best part of Star Wars because for the first time ever, Anakin and Luke weren't center stage. The Sith and Jedi are still present, of course, and Korriban in particular does a wonderful job of exploring that ideological struggle, but the Old Republic, not the MMO, is great because it all felt so new and interesting to explore. I love both games for different reasons. The first being the archetypal hero story and how BioWare, when they actually made good games, nailed the feeling of Star Wars, not to mention that twist. BioShock often gets brought up as the best twist in gaming, but in my opinion, Knights of the Old Republic does it better. It's funny how obvious it is in retrospect, and the sheer amount of foreshadowing beforehand, but it specifically uses player importance and the expectations of a video game, only to pull the rug out from beneath you for one of the best reveals in gaming. If you know, you know. KOTOR 2 is a different beast entirely. Even though it's a broken mess to this day and basically unplayable without the restored content mod, the first game walked so Obsidian could run. It features my favourite work by Chris Avallone, and what the team was able to achieve in about a year is remarkable. The term deconstruction comes with a lot of baggage nowadays, but it's important to remember that prior to KOTOR, no one had really held up a mirror and tried to examine the nature of the Force. Then suddenly, in comes Kreia, which, lover or hater, had a huge impact on the setting and brought a Nietzschean examination of the Jedi, Sith, and the will to power within the Star Wars mythos. I love this game a lot, even as it starts to fall apart near the end in a way that even the mod couldn't restore, but I understand why some people hate the Sith Lords as a complete 180 from the tone of the first game. Anyway, that's probably enough fawning over KOTOR for one day. I guess I need to find some way to wrap this up and conclude, don't I? Star Wars' fixation on the Skywalkers, Palpatine, and Death Stars, but bigger this time, has been a huge detriment to the potential of its setting. Of course, it's obvious why this is. Disney doesn't care about artistic integrity. They're focused on the merchandising and nostalgia bait potential of characters. It is, like many things in life, solely about profit margins. I can't speak for true fans that have been following the franchise for nigh on 50 years now, but in a perfect world where artists, writers, and other creatives were allowed to do what they want with a setting, it would be amazing to see the potential of a galaxy with an untold amount of planets be divorced from the same handful of people and explore entirely new territory. There are all kinds of books and movies just waiting to be made here. Imagine a cat and mouse thriller with a Jedi and Sith on a desolate snow planet. Imagine backroom intrigue in the halls of Coruscant. A space western in the vein of Bebop or Trigun involving the Hutt cartels. A civil uprising among common folk against a corrupt occupation. The potential is limitless, and what a shame that everything has to come back to Jedis and Darth Vader. As for KOTOR, I already made my peace with it long ago, and what that soulless, cartoonish MMO did to Revan. Of course, it's only a matter of time before Disney digs it up and gives it to some other unknown hack director to defile further, but whether you love or hate what's happened to Star Wars, or any IP for that matter, it can never take away what came before it. And as a wise droid once said,
"Statement, apathy is death."
"Oh, matey, not a fan of the Acolyte, are we?"